2025 is common sense and happens to be bipartisan. For decades, the American people, Congress, and certain corners of the federal government have tried to grasp a reliable estimate of how many criminal laws exist, either in statute or regulation. In the 1980s, the Department of Justice tried to count the number of federal criminal laws within the U.S. Code and estimated there were about 3,000. In 1998, the American Bar Association attempted to count the criminal offenses, said it was likely higher than 3,000, but to complete the task with accuracy, quote, is likely to prove futile and inaccurate. In other words, the DOJ and the ABA stopped counting due to the likely near endless quantity of criminal laws on the books. In the early 2000s, retired Professor Dr. John Baker from LSU estimated the U.S. Code contains more than 4,000 offenses. In 2008, he updated it to 4,450. In 2019, the U.S. Code estimated 5,199, according to the Heritage Foundation and the Mercatus Center. Additionally, there are estimated to be thousands of criminal offenses, many buried in regulatory codes. For context, there are an estimated 300,000 federal regulations that carry criminal offenses that could put an American citizen in prison. These 300,000 regulations with criminal penalties were created through the regulatory process, not drafted and deliberated by Congress, bypassing accountability. In some instances, the laws are so obscure and vague that even law enforcement and federal agencies are unaware they exist. It's no wonder why the issue of criminalization has drawn concern from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Every American faces the potential of unknowingly violating these federal statutes at any given moment, only to be met with the DOJ charging them with vague or bogus statute. This must end. The American people in Congress deserve to have a proper accounting. This bill, the Count the Crimes to Cut Act of 2025, is a prudent and necessary step toward restoring clarity, accountability, and proportionality in the federal criminal justice system. It requires the Attorney General to provide Congress with a list of all federal crimes in statute and regulation, along with pertinent information such as the potential criminal penalty, the mens rea requirements for the offense, and the DOJ prosecutorial history of the statute. Fundamental to the rule of law is the idea that individuals must have reasonable notice of what conduct is prohibited. Publishing a complete index of federal criminal offenses supports due process by ensuring Congress and the public have access to this information. By requiring detailed information on prosecution history, criminal penalties, and mens rea requirements, Congress can identify where reform is most needed. As James Madison said in Federalist 61, when fundamental principles of representative government and the importance of accessible and understandable laws, quote, it will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice if the laws are so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood, if they be repealed or revised before they are promulgated, or undergo such incessant changes that no man who knows what the law is today can guess what it will be tomorrow. That was Madison. That was 250 years ago. Here we are, and we have a complex code that a large number of the American people have no idea that the behavior in which they are engaging is potentially criminal. And I believe, and a couple more points to this, I don't want this legislation, though, to be cover for not taking other actions. I take as sincere the concerns that have been expressed already about mens rea or eliminating certain statutes. But if we wait around to study it endlessly, we're not going to act. I would suggest that we ought to be taking action, and I think this should apply across the board. I mean, concerns that, this is only going to have some impact on white-collar crimes versus more violent crimes or something along those lines. That's not the point here. I could bring up numerous examples where Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh was inserted himself into saying that the mens rea question with respect to an individual who was involved in a gang dispute as to whether it should be a manslaughter sentence or a murder sentence, secondary murder sentence, 8 years versus 20 years, the mens rea mattered and clarity was needed. There are things like that are occurring all the time in our criminal justice system, and those of us who are concerned about overcriminalization should be mindful of that. I know it's bipartisan, and I appreciate the support. I appreciate the support of the gentlelady from Georgia, the previous support of the minority leader, Mr. Jeffries, and I believe the support of the ranking member. And so I'm grateful for that. But I do want to be clear that we need to be taking actions besides just the counting. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to commend Chairman Roy and Ranking Member McBath and Representative Cohen for their excellent bipartisan work on this legislation. I'm very pleased to support it. And as I've been saying this morning, I think it's the foundation for us moving forward on a whole bunch of the different initiatives and endeavors that we've been exploring today. I agree with my friend from Texas that this should not be an excuse for action. And there's some actions that could be taken right now by the executive branch of government to focus on real crime. Unfortunately, they've been moving in the wrong direction. They keep going after people for engaging in freedom of speech. They keep going after news entities, which the President of the United States has sued. Then the FCC comes after them. Then he gets a private shakedown settlement. The Department of Justice has dismantled the Crypto Capture Task Force. It is dismantled the Foreign Influence Task Force. It's dismantled the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. So they are actually letting our guard down with respect to real crime while they focus on imaginary crimes and things which are constitutionally not crimes at all, like people engaging in freedom of expression, writing op-eds, attending rallies, and so on. But I agree with my friend about James Madison. The founders envisioned federal criminal law to be limited to national concerns, which is why the vast majority of crimes are prosecuted today at the state and local level, not in the federal government. And I'd like very much the quote that the gentleman from Texas repeated from James Madison about the laws should not be so voluminous that they cannot be read, nor so incoherent that they cannot be understood. There should be simplicity and clarity so people know what is expected of them and what's not, so that there's notice for everybody. This legislation will direct the DOJ and other agencies to compile a comprehensive report detailing every federal statutory and regulatory criminal offense, which have indeed grown substantially over the last several decades. And despite several previous attempts by the Department of Justice, the ABA, and several scholars to determine how many federal offenses there are, no comprehensive accounting exists. And I hope this legislation will cut through it. Our colleagues have described this as something like the 12 labors of Hercules, just to determine how many federal crimes we've got. I was wondering whether artificial intelligence could help. Maybe somebody could just punch into their AI program, if they got it, how many criminal offenses are there at the federal level? Maybe they could begin to point us in the right direction. But in any event, this legislation will finally provide us that comprehensive inventory. We will get the elements of proof, the potential penalties, the mens rea requirements that exist or don't exist, and the number of prosecutions each year for the preceding 15 years for every listed offense that's brought to us. We'll be in a position to thoroughly review the federal criminal law so we can begin to clarify, simplify, streamline, and reduce. And this is indeed, as the Heritage Foundation's Giancarlo Canaparo, one of the Republican witnesses, testified, this will be the first step towards solving the problem of scattered, vague, imprecise, and incoherent criminal law. So I'm glad we're doing this. I think it is important to point out that there is a move against over-criminalization, over-incarceration, over-prosecution in America. There's a separate agenda, which is to try to wipe out criminal law at all for white-collar criminals who some would like to see free to engage in fraud, embezzlement, corruption, bribery, kickbacks, embezzlement, and so on. That's not the agenda that I'm speaking for today. I'm for the other agenda of making the criminal law fair and equal for everybody in the society, not undercutting the criminal law just for white-collar offenders. With that, I'll yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas to offer an amendment in the nature of substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.